My in-laws' family dumped my sister-in-law, who's now mute and bedridden, on me and went on a vacation to Hawaii. Right before they left, my husband, Jack, said, "Taking care of her is your job. Don't slack off." The moment Jack and his family left the house, my sister-in-law sat up and said, "Okay, let's get going too." I'm Lisa, 29 years old. As a teenager, I dreamed of becoming a pop star, but eventually realized it was a fleeting dream, and before I knew it, I was in my late 20s. I started dating Jack, whom I had met through a friend, because my mother, with whom I live, kept asking when she was going to see her grandchild. Talking to Jack, I found out that he too had once dreamed of entering the entertainment industry when he was young. Despite our past aspirations, Jack now works at a prestigious trading company with its headquarters in downtown Manhattan. After graduating from college, I worked at a bank until I got married and quit. One day, Jack and I went to his parents' house. Jack has a younger sister named Lucy, who caught a fever when she was a child. Her mother thought it was just a common cold, but when the fever didn't subside, they took her to a doctor and found out it was encephalitis, caused by influenza. It was already too late, and due to the prolonged high fever, Lucy was left with brain damage and turned bedridden. Furthermore, the high fever left lingering effects on the part of her brain that controls speech, leaving her unable to speak. My mother-in-law was the one who took care of Lucy for the most part. For some reason, Lucy and I got along well, and I always looked forward to visiting Jack's family. Lucy couldn't converse verbally, so she used sign language. After becoming close with Lucy, I naturally picked up sign language as well. One day, I signed to Lucy, "We're like best friends who've known each other forever, aren't we?" To which she replied, "Yes, we are. Let's stay close friends forever." I responded, "Of course we will." However, my mother-in-law, who is the complete opposite of Lucy, was always sarcastic towards me. Jack and I live in a condo about a 30-minute drive from his parents' house, but occasionally my mother-in-law would drive over unannounced and start nitpicking on me. "Jackie's shoes are filthy. If a man's shoes are dirty, it reflects poorly on his work. It's your responsibility to keep them clean." My mother-in-law always referred to Jack as Jackie. "Make sure you always fold the laundry neatly. If you don't, Jackie will be in a bad mood." The one who raised Jack this way was none other than her. "No matter how late Jackie gets home, you must never go to bed before him, even if Jackie says it's okay for you to go to bed first." My mother-in-law would say such old-fashioned things. Jack, while we were dating and initially after we got married, was very kind and never disagreed with me. For example, if I said I wasn't feeling well and asked him to have dinner outside, he would readily agree. If I saw a designer bag I liked, he would buy it for me the following month. However, about a year after we got married, Jack started to change. Or perhaps he returned to his original self. He started coming home late from work, always reeking of alcohol. Jack's been increasingly busy on Saturdays and Sundays, always claiming that work kept him away from home. When he would occasionally visit his parents' home, he would decline my requests to join him, which was kind of odd. One day, I decided to confront him about it. "Jack, you've become so distant lately. It feels like you're a completely different person," I said. Jack glared at me for a moment, then replied, "That's not true. You're overthinking things." "I don't think I am," I retorted. "You barely talk to me anymore." "I told you, you're overthinking it. Stop bringing this up." With that, he walked away to take a shower, ending the conversation. One day, Jack surprised me by saying, "This Sunday, I'm going home. What are you going to do?" I was taken aback, as Jack had previously always refused my company on such visits. "Wait, I can come with you this time?" I asked, to which he replied, "That's why I'm asking." "Well, of course I'll come then. I'd like to see Lucy too," I added. Jack frowned a bit and said, "You and Lucy seem to get along really well, huh?" "Yes, we do. It feels like we've been best friends forever," I responded, noticing Jack's slight grimace at my words. On Sunday, I drove us to Jack's family home in Nebraska. We stopped at a bakery along the way to buy some pastries as a gift. Jack's mother always has a frown when she sees me, but she would light up upon receiving the pastries. When we arrived, his mother came to greet us. As usual, she frowned at my sight, almost as if she was not happy to see me. "Mother-in-law, please have some of these," I said, handing her the pastries. She snatched them from me and peered inside before replying, "Is it these pastries again? They're getting boring. But since you insist, I'll have them." Her face lit up like a child receiving a toy. "Is father around today?" he asked. Jack's father was elderly, but still worked actively. "He's out at a meeting. Why, did you need something?" she asked. "No, not really. I just had something I wanted to talk about with him," he replied. I hadn't heard anything about this from Jack. "What's going on? Did you have something to tell your father?" I asked Jack. "It's none of your business," he responded. "What do you mean? We're a married couple, aren't we? Can you just stop nagging?" Jack retorted, to which his mother added, "Exactly. If Jack doesn't want to tell you something, you shouldn't be prying." I decided not to respond, knowing that arguing with her would be fruitless. Just then, Jack's sister appeared. "Oh, Jack, you're here," she said. "Sis, perfect timing. I have something to discuss." Jack started. "What is it?" she asked. "I can take a long vacation next month. I was thinking about a family trip to Hawaii. How about you, sis?" Jack proposed. "I'll pass. I don't have a passport," she replied. I was taken aback. Jack, who was always busy with work and rarely took time off, was suggesting a trip to Hawaii. "Jack, is everything all right with your job?" "I'm only suggesting this trip because my work's going fine." My mother-in-law seemed displeased with my interference in Jack's business. Frowning deeply, she said to me, "You shouldn't meddle with decisions Jack has made. You're really nosy, aren't you?" "That's right. And Lisa, the reason I asked you here today is because I want you to take care of Lucy during the time we're on vacation." I was momentarily taken aback. But then I realized that staying here with Lucy would be much more enjoyable than going on a trip to Hawaii with my mother-in-law. "Okay, I will take care of Lucy. But if that was the case, you didn't need to bring me all the way here to tell me that, did you?" "I figured if I told you in front of my mother, you'd understand quicker," Jack replied. He must have assumed I'd resist when I found out I couldn't go to Hawaii. And if I did, he wanted my mother-in-law to forcefully convince me. It was clear to me that this was his intent. I was left feeling dumbfounded and left the room to head to Lucy's room. Lucy looked delighted to see me. "It's been a while. How have you been?" "I'm good. What brings you here today?" Jack asked me to come with him to our parents' house, so I did. But it's strange. Before, whenever Jack came here, he used to tell me I couldn't come along. My brother is definitely hiding something. He's always been secretive. So, apparently, he's going to Hawaii next month. But I'll be staying back. I think that's better, though. As I said this with a smile, Lucy also replied with a grin. "In that case, you should come over and stay here." "Sure, I'll do that." After that, Lucy and I had a great time chatting. I always wondered why Lucy and my mother-in-law were so different. About an hour later, Jack came to get me, and we headed home. At that time, Lucy gave me a slight wink. She revealed a shocking truth and an even more shocking plan to me. A month later, on the day of the Hawaii trip, Jack and I went to his parents' house. Although I wasn't going to Hawaii, I brought my luggage to stay at my in-laws for a week with Lucy. I took the luggage to Lucy's room. "It's finally happening," Lucy said, flashing a playful grin. When I returned to the living room, everyone going to Hawaii was already there. It seemed that Jack's father wasn't going, as he wasn't present. As the departure time neared, the entire family, with Jack's voice rising above the rest, chimed in. "Taking care of Lucy is your job. Don't slack off." And even my mother-in-law added, "Please get along well with Lucy. It's better for you to stay here, isn't it? If anything happens to Lucy, it's all your fault. We'll hold you responsible." It was absurd for someone who was about to abandon their immobile sister for a vacation in Hawaii to say these words. But I did not react at all. It didn't matter what Jack said. I wasn't in the mood to see them off, so I returned to Lucy's room. It was at that very moment. Lucy sprang up energetically from her bed and called out to me. "Come on, let's get going." This echoed a conversation we'd had just the other day when Lucy confessed, "You know, I can actually walk." And with walking came the ability to converse. "Since when?" I asked. "Since last year, I suppose." "Why have you been hiding this from the rest of the family?" With that, Lucy began sharing an unexpected tale. "Actually, my father and mother are both remarried. I'm my dad's child from his previous marriage, and my sister and brother are from my mom's side." I was surprised, but considering how distant and cold my mother-in-law usually was towards Lucy, I couldn't help but think, I thought so. "Is that so?" "Yeah, my mom despises me. And I didn't want to talk to her, so I pretended that I couldn't." "And your father?" "Dad knows everything. He's always on my side." "I see. That's why, regarding this trip to Hawaii, I'm thinking we should go too." "Huh? What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm planning to go to Hawaii on the same day with you. We'll even stay at the same resort," Lucy said, with a sparkle in her eye, which caught me completely off guard. "What? I'd be thrilled to go to Hawaii with you, Lucy, but do you even have a passport?" "Of course. I secretly got my passport last month. And don't worry about the expenses. My dad is covering our plane tickets and the resort, including yours." "I see. I'm really looking forward to this." And that's how we ended up here today. When Lucy and I arrived at the airport via taxi, my father-in-law was there, waiting to see us off. "Lisa, it's been a while. I know it must be surprising, but I hope you enjoy the trip to Hawaii." "Thank you, father-in-law. I feel guilty for all the plane tickets and resort fees you've covered." "Ha, don't worry about it. As long as you two have fun, I'm happy." "Thank you for your kindness." After that, we boarded a plane from a different airline than my husband's family. We landed in Hawaii early in the morning. We took a taxi from the airport and checked into the resort hotel. Lucy and I were sharing a room. I mentioned to Lucy, "Your father seems pretty well traveled." "Yeah, he's been on several international business trips. He's even been to Hawaii a few times." "So, what's the plan?" "I'm guessing my mom and everyone will dine at the restaurant here tonight. I'm thinking of surprising them." "That sounds like fun. I'm excited." Should we get some rest to recover from getting jet-lagged? That sounds like a good idea. I couldn't sleep at all on the plane. After taking a shower, we climbed into bed and quickly fell asleep. We woke up around late afternoon, close to 4 o'clock. Lucy was already awake, starting to wear makeup. "I'm sorry, I slept too much." "No, don't worry about it. I just woke up too. We really had a good sleep, didn't we?" Fully recharged and ready for our battle. Around 7 o'clock, I said to Lucy, "I'll go and see and check the restaurant." As I was looking for Jack and his party from the shadows near the entrance of the restaurant, I found them, dining joyfully in a far-off spot. I was too far away from them, so I decided to venture deeper into the restaurant. From my position, all I could see was their backs, and it was hard to identify anyone. But I spotted the back of a young woman that I didn't recognize. There wasn't any such woman when they had left Jack's parents' house. Upon seeing this, I was taken aback, nearly letting out a loud gasp, but I managed to suppress it. When I strained my ears, I could intermittently hear Jack and my mother-in-law's voices. "I'm glad it's not that woman today." "Yeah, I really drew the short straw. She's tainted my family record." If only we had an elegant daughter like her from the start. "I want to divorce her and start fresh soon." Try to find a reason for the divorce and extract a hefty alimony from that woman. "Even without a cause for the divorce, it's fine. I can fabricate as many as I want. She's so bad that I want to throw her in the trash. I want to see my grandchild from you and her soon." My mother-in-law was giving the woman a smile that she had never shown me before. I was driven by the urge to step forward and see the woman's face, but I held it in, returned to my room, and told Lucy. "That took a while. I'm sorry, I saw something shocking. Jack brought a woman that I've never seen before." "What?" I was about to scream. Jack and my mother-in-law were continuously bad-mouthing me, and Jack even said he would find a reason for divorce. That's terrible. Jack called me a bad catch, but seeing him with another woman, I felt relieved. Now I can divorce him outright. That's a good thing. Shall we make our entrance then? Lucy and I headed towards the restaurant hall. When we entered to the restaurant, we requested to sit near Jack's table and were able to get a seat quite close to them. They didn't notice our arrival. As we were sitting quite close, we could hear their conversation well, which was still filled with derogatory comments about me. I was amazed and ended up giving a bitter smile at how they could badmouth me indefinitely. Seeing my face, Lucy gave a nod with a smile. That was a cue for us to begin our counterattack. I stood up from my seat, stepped forward towards Jack, and shouted, "Are you all having a good time?" I'll never forget the look on Jack and my mother-in-law's faces at that moment. Their mouths agape and eyes wide open. They froze for a few seconds. After a few seconds, my mother-in-law finally spoke. "Why are you here? And how did Lucy get here without a wheelchair?" At her words, Lucy stood up, gave mother-in-law a smile, and said, "I don't need a wheelchair." Once again, they were stunned. Thanks to you, my body and speech have returned to normal. I must have caused you quite a bit of trouble for a long time. Lucy, when did you regain your ability to speak? I wonder when that was. Maybe last year? Then why did you hide it until now? Because it was better if you guys continued to believe that I couldn't speak. You and Jack were speaking ill of me earlier, weren't you? My mother-in-law's face turned pale in an instant. What do you mean? She asked. Yeah, we weren't saying anything bad about you, Lisa, Jack retorted. That won't work. I recorded everything on my phone. Do you want me to play it back right now? I countered. My mother-in-law fell silent, but Jack stood up. Lisa, you've been causing me trouble all this time, and now you're making these outrageous claims? He barked. Jack was the one making absurd claims, so I retaliated. Once I returned back home, I'll immediately contact my lawyer to initiate our divorce procedure. You can't deny the fact that you're on a vacation abroad with another woman. Plus, you described getting with me as drawing a blank lottery ticket, so I expect you to demonstrate sincerity by paying a hefty compensation for that comment, I declared. At my words, my mother-in-law seemed to acknowledge her defeat, and her attitude abruptly changed. Lisa, dear, I really like you. Please, try to get along with Jack. This woman is not involved with Jack, she pleaded. I'm sorry, but I can't do that. Since I am a blank lottery ticket, I cannot live with Jack. Please, enjoy your time with this woman. Oh, and I might also seek compensation from her. Isn't that exciting? I smirked. The woman in question turned pale and began to tremble upon hearing my words. Unfazed by the public gaze, Jack fell to his knees and pleaded. Lisa, I beg you, don't make this a big deal. My company has strict rules about this, he implored. What's that? You don't sound sorry at all, I replied. Jack appeared taken aback, then tried again. Lisa, I beg you, forgive me. If my company finds out, I'll lose my job, he confessed. Though your plea sounds better now, I will never forgive you. You are married, and yet here you are on an overseas trip with another woman, I said firmly. Upon hearing my words, my mother-in-law also fell to her knees next to Jack, pleading. Please, forgive my son, she implored, tears streaming down her face. By this time, all the other customers were watching us, and the restaurant manager started walking towards our table. Seeing this, I got up and said, Well, Lucy and I will head back to our room. You all enjoy your Hawaiian vacation. I guess things will get a bit difficult when you get back home. Hearing this, Jack, crying, shouted at the top of his lungs. Please forgive me! I can't afford to pay any compensation! At his loud outburst, the restaurant manager frowned, instructed something to a nearby staff member, and then briskly told Jack something. It was a polite way of telling him that he was disturbing the other guests and needed to leave. However, Jack was taken aback, not understanding the manager's words. Soon, 2 buffed-up security guards arrived and hauled Jack away. Jack was sobbing and struggling, but he was no match for the 2 bulky men. My mother-in-law and the woman were dumbfounded, unable to utter a word. While Lucy and I were also surprised by the turn of events, I thought Jack got what he deserved. A week later, Lucy and I returned home. Jack was quickly released and seemed to have returned to his room. However, I later heard that he had been in a state of shock since returning to his room and had kept to himself until the end of the trip. The day after I returned home, I went to the law firm where my old college friend worked to request for a divorce proceeding. Unfortunately, my friend was not present, but a female lawyer was assigned to me, who was very easy to talk to, and I was able to explain everything that had happened. After listening to my story, she assured me that a divorce was possible, that I could claim alimony, and that she would investigate the woman who was with Jack in Hawaii before determining whether I could claim alimony from her as well. A month later, the female lawyer contacted me and informed me that it had been proved that Jack had been dating the other woman for about 6 months. Hence, She said it was possible for me to demand alimony from this woman too. I requested the female lawyer, please squeeze as much alimony as you can from Jack and his woman. She smiled and nodded. 2 months later, I was officially divorced, and into my bank account was deposited the alimony from the two. I mumbled as I saw the amount. And that's karma for calling me a blank lottery ticket. 3 months later, Jack and my mother-in-law suddenly visited my place. Despite it being only 3 months, they had lost a lot of weight and looked completely haggard. I asked them, "What do you want? I don't want to see your faces." Jack replied in a thin voice, "I'm sorry. Could you lend me some money? I've lost my job and the woman ran away. I don't even have money for food." My mother-in-law also spoke in a whisper, "I've divorced my husband too. I don't have money. Please, I beg you." My mother-in-law was in tears. I responded, "Too bad. I have absolutely no obligation to help you, and even if I did, I would never help you guys out. Now, please leave." After they left, I sprinkled a large amount of salt at my entrance to get rid of bad energy from my house.
Without much of a greeting, I get straight to tidying up. Seeing this, my ex-husband James finally speaks up. "You don't even shed a tear, huh?" It seems James was prepared for me to resist and cry when he pleaded on his knees for a divorce. To be honest, I thought he was a very vain person. He's not the only one who fell out of love. "Well, you're the one who's going to have a harder time after the divorce than me, James." Rather than shed tears, I could hardly hold back the laughing. "Huh? What do you mean?" My ex-husband James looked at me with a suspicious face. "Between a housewife like you, Kate, and a corporate hotshot like me, you're the one who's going to struggle. Plus, I'm planning to remarry, while you'll be on your own." Well, in a normal situation that might be true, but it seems like Emma, the woman you're cheating with, is quite trash. "Wait, how do you know her name?" My name is Kate, a 32-year-old housewife. I met my husband James at a social gathering. Because we were the same age, we had a lot in common and we quickly became good friends. On top of that, James was a salesperson in a trading company and made significantly more money than the average person our age. Thanks to him, I've been living a life without any inconveniences. There was just one issue. Our marriage life wasn't going so well. Although it's just one issue, it's a pretty serious one. I realized it had already been 7 years since we got married. At first, we were truly in love, acting lovey-dovey almost every day, and always having meals together, no matter how busy James was. But that loving relationship had completely cooled down. "Take care, what about dinner?" "I don't need it, I'll eat out. You can go to bed first, I'll be home late." "Alright, got it." When we were newlyweds, he used to say, "Eating together with you, Kate, is my greatest happiness." However, now it's normal for him to come home after midnight. He gets home when I'm asleep and heads to work in the morning without having a proper conversation. It feels like being avoided by a child who's going through puberty. Around the time when such days became normal, I noticed certain changes in James. Huh? Did he always use this hair product? And there's even a full line of skincare products. And there's cologne. Until now, to be honest, he'd hardly cared about his appearance. He didn't even have many casual clothes, since he only wore suits. But suddenly he's splurging on branded outfits. I don't mind if he had some kind of change of heart. Plus, I always thought he didn't care enough about his appearance. But the reason for this change seems a little off. Observing James's behavior, it's suspicious. He started using his phone in secret and even takes it with him to the bathroom and shower. He used to leave it lying around on the couch and I'd nearly sit on it all the time, thinking how I could have messed up his phone. Why has he suddenly changed so much like this? Because of James's behavior, I began to suspect him more and more whenever he got home late. Could he be cheating? But I had nothing more than suspicion and no conclusive evidence. And despite how cold our relationship had become, somewhere in my heart, I still wanted to believe in James. That's why the thought of my suspicions being true was terrifying. I started to act in a way to improve my relationship with James, as if I were turning away from reality. I tried to increase our conversations and proposed outings, but every time I tried to approach him, I was given the cold shoulder. Well, that's understandable. We've been married for 7 years, and our relationship had become almost like a sham for several years. Even though I'm trying to make an effort, being treated coldly makes me really lonely. With such things going on, my feelings started to fray. One night, I could not hold back my feelings any longer, and I finally decided to ask James. "Hey, you're not cheating, are you?" When I asked him, James just looked at me and remained silent. "Say something, are you cheating or not?" My husband remained silent for a while. Then, without a word, he stood up from the couch he was sitting on and approached me, seated at the table. He bowed his head toward me. "I'm sorry, Kate. I want a divorce." I was at a loss for words by these unexpected words. Without paying any mind to my stunned silence, he continued, "I've fallen in love with another woman. I want to start a new life with her." How dare he say such a selfish statement without hesitation? What did he think of our 7 years? I had a presentiment that there was another woman, but I never imagined he would say something like this so suddenly. All my efforts to mend our relationship were in vain. Was the man I fell in love with really this selfish and cruel? When we were first getting to know each other, I thought there was no one else as wonderful as him. Unable to say anything, these thoughts just kept spinning in my head. Then my husband made another statement that made me doubt my ears. "The truth is, she's pregnant with my child. I want to be with her for the sake of our child's future." I felt dizzy, as if I were about to collapse right there. I could feel everything before me turning white. We didn't have a child. During our 7 years together, we weren't even using protection. In fact, we'd actively been trying to conceive, and even sought infertility treatments. Despite all that, we were unable to have a child. According to the medical reports, my husband had fertility issues, but he's been saying that he's eager to have a child. That's why, though we know how difficult it was, we never gave up. I had always done my best to meet his expectations. Well, recently our relationship had lost its spark and we hadn't been trying to conceive. It seems that the fact that he had a child with his mistress was a major factor in his decision to divorce.
"I've always wanted a child and I want to show my mom her grandchild as soon as possible. You understand how I feel, don't you, Kate? So please, let me go. Let's get a divorce."
My mother-in-law has been suffering from serious illness and hospitalized for the past 2 years. I understand his desire to let her hold a grandchild as soon as possible, but to have a child with another woman instead of his wife? How terrible could this be? I always wanted a child too. That's why I even attempted fertility treatments. I thought we were sharing the pain of not being able to have children.
"Do you realize how selfish you're being? You betrayed me!"
In my anger, I shouted at him, but all James did was look down and apologize. It seemed like he was just waiting out the storm, and that made me irritated even more. What kind of woman is she? Just because she's having your baby, I'm nowhere near ready to accept a divorce. I urged James to tell me more about her, but he responded,
"I'm sorry, but please spare me. I want to respect your privacy."
"What? Just how selfish can you be? I have a right to know as your wife. Tell me everything." Even when I questioned him like this, James stubbornly refused to reveal anything about the women he cheated with.
"She's 2 years younger than you, Kate."
"That's it?"
"She's an employee."
What a joke. He must really care about her. No matter how much I prodded, James didn't provide any substantial information. For a few days, we continued to discuss this. But during those talks, I absolutely refused to accede to James's request for a divorce. I didn't want things to go exactly as he wanted. All the while, James kept bowing his head to me.
"I beg you, I no longer have feelings for you. What's the point in continuing this marriage? Even my mother knows about this and she's okay with it."
Apparently, James had already discussed this with my mother-in-law. I was unfortunately shaken up by that. My mother-in-law and I had been distant lately, but I thought we had a good relationship. Then James kept revealing one shocking fact after another.
I've already given her an engagement ring. We plan to move in together soon. All that's left is for you and I to get a divorce.
I felt faint and nearly passed out. My husband, James, was seriously planning to be with the woman he was having an affair with. But I didn't agree to divorce him. This back and forth between James and I lasted almost a month. One day, James seemed to have lost his patience and pleaded on his knees.
I can't take this anymore. Just accept the divorce already. Our relationship has been broken for a while now. There's no point in continuing like this. Please, please divorce me.
My husband pleaded this, rubbing his forehead on the floor with a begging posture. I had been holding out for almost a month. Maybe it was time to accept the divorce. Fine, let's get divorced, but I'm taking alimony and my fair share of our assets.
I understand. I'm prepared for that.
Then we talked about the alimony in detail. I asked for $50,000. It's more than the average, but as I protected our home in the 7 years of our marriage life, I wanted that much as compensation. James agreed. We also discussed asset division, and we decided that I will receive half of the balance in our joint account, and he would cover the cost of my move. Then I signed the divorce papers that James had prepared. As I filled out the divorce papers, various thoughts ran through my heart. Even though we didn't love each other anymore, we had lived under the same roof for 7 years. And it would all end with just a single piece of paper. But I no longer had any feelings for James. The next day I submitted the documents to the city hall, and our mutual divorce was finalized. After the divorce, James married the other woman right away. I don't know if she hurried him or not. But since they were going to have a child, he probably wanted to be with her as soon as possible. I was honestly surprised at how fast he moved, even though I hadn't finished sorting out the belongings in the apartment we used to share. That made me want to hurry up and pack my things as soon as possible, so I headed to the apartment where I used to live with James. As it turned out, the timing overlapped and James had also come to the apartment. Without much of a greeting, I get straight to tidying up. Seeing this, my ex-husband, James, finally speaks up.
You don't even shed a tear, huh?
It seems James was prepared for me to resist and cry when he pleaded on his knees for a divorce. To be honest, I thought he was a very vain person. He's not the only one who fell out of love. Maybe because I had been refusing the divorce for a long time, James might have assumed that I still loved him. He seems to misunderstand, but the reason why I didn't accept the divorce right away was because of my stubbornness, not to go along with James and to investigate his mistress by myself. Well, you're the one who's going to have a harder time after the divorce than me, James. Rather than shed tears, I could hardly hold back the laughing.
Huh? What do you mean?
My ex-husband, James, looked at me with his suspicious face.
Between a housewife like you, Kate, and a corporate hotshot like me, you're the one who's going to struggle. Plus, I'm planning to remarry. Well, you'll be on your own.
Well, in a normal situation, that might be true, but it seems like Emma, the woman you're cheating with, is quite trash.
Wait, how do you know her name?
You thought I was just being stubborn and refusing our divorce? I've been having a private investigator look into her this whole time. James's face turned pale. In a few weeks, I had obtained a lot of information about his mistress. Firstly, her name is Emma. She's 27 years old. In fact, she's divorced twice and currently living at her parents' home. Emma, from what I hear, is a woman with loose morals, constantly shuffling through men. As a result, even though she has a child with her first husband, he has custody and she has been forbidden to see her child due to her being a bad influence on the child. Indeed, Emma seems to have other men in her life apart from my ex-husband. The PI even saw her go into a motel with other men. Just in case, I asked them to take photos as evidence. When I shared all this information and showed him the picture, James collapsed on the spot.
No way, Emma can't be that kind of woman. She only had eyes for me, and we were planning to build a happy family.
James seems to be head over heels in love with Emma. It's frustrating, but this woman does seem to have the talent to charm men. She doesn't particularly stand out in terms of looks, but she probably has a knack for behavior that captivates men.
What? You're lying. This is all made up to shake me up. This photo must be fake. Good grief, was James this foolish? Believe it or not, it's up to you, but even now your mistress sees other men. Oh, not your mistress anymore, I meant your new wife, right? Maybe the child isn't even yours. James's face turned increasingly pale. No way, not Emma. These are findings from the private investigators, so the possibility of you being deceived is high. Perhaps among her multiple boyfriends, you were the one who made the most money. That's why she chose you to marry. It's an honor, isn't it? Even if the child may not be biologically yours, you wanted a kid anyway, so raise your child well. I said this to James as a final blow and left the apartment with my belongings. After a while, I received an email from James. He wanted to get back together. As I suspected, the child Emma had given birth to wasn't James's. When he confronted Emma, she retorted,
I didn't know whose child it was until it was born.
but James was already married to Emma. Therefore, legally, he has to raise the child she gave birth to as his own. James was just a money tree for her. As proof, when paying alimony to me, James had covered Emma's portion too. So James had paid me $80,000 in total. James was furious and confronted Emma, but she said,
You seemed happy to serve me.
and one day she left the child behind and disappeared. James called me while begging. You were right, I was deceived. I'm really sorry. I want to start over again. I was just disgusted. You think I'm going to come back to you by saying those kind of good things? You had an affair, that's a fact. You betrayed me, that's also a fact. You need to accept reality. I hung up the phone after saying that. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that after this, James handed over the child Emma left behind to her parents, telling them to take responsibility. Emma's parents said,
That's troublesome. You raised the child.
but James stubbornly refused, saying, I have no obligation to raise a child that's not biologically mine. He submitted the DNA test results to prove the child was not his.
And he also revoked his acknowledgement of the child.
Emma's parents apparently didn't know that the child wasn't James's. After they found Emma, they took her back home and are forcing her to raise the child in semi-captivity
Apparently, they're keeping a close eye on her.
to prevent her from freely meeting other men. By the way, even though my ex-husband James has lost all ties with Emma, he has paid me $80,000 in alimony, including Emma's portion, causing his savings to disappear all at once. He has been demanding Emma to repay the alimony he had covered for her, but it seems she doesn't care at all about him and is saying she can't pay back what she doesn't have. As a result, James has sadly become a divorced man without any savings. In addition, he's unable to focus on his work due to this outcome, causing him to make lots of mistakes. Now he's been relegated to a department in a rural area with no prospect of promotion, where he lives a lonely and solitary life. On the other hand, I've moved back to my parents' house and am helping out with their farming business. And after a few years, I fell in love and married a local fisherman. We don't have children, but I'm spending every day happily with my husband, who is always kind to me.
Where are you now? I'm watching a baseball game with my bro. That's when I became certain my husband was lying to me, because his brother isn't in any condition to watch a baseball game right now. Once I realized all of this, I decided to take revenge on my husband. I found unlikely allies for this. My name is Sarah. I'm 27 years old. After graduating from a medical college, I work as a nurse at a university hospital. All jobs are tough, but being a nurse means dealing with people's lives. While I don't directly intervene as a doctor would, the everyday support and minor treatments I perform come with a weight of responsibility that's not much different. When I was in elementary school, I had to be hospitalized due to an illness. Despite being young, I felt a lot of anxiety, and when my parents couldn't visit me due to work, I would cry alone. But the one who saved my heart during those times was the nurse who was taking care of me back then. Sarah, it's okay if you don't hold back when you're feeling lonely. It's definitely going to get better. Let's hang in there a little longer. The female nurse who encouraged me like this every day. Thanks to her, I can say without exaggeration that I was able to overcome the hardships of my hospital stay. After being discharged, I admired her and decided to become a nurse. I studied hard to achieve my dream, and now it's been 5 years since I've become a nurse. The job is certainly challenging, but every time I see a patient smile, I can genuinely feel that I'm glad to be doing this work. I'm fortunate that I can continue my current job. One of the reasons is it's because of my husband Bob, whom I married a year ago. I first met Bob at a party. Once we started talking, we found out that we had a lot in common, and we hit it off pretty quickly. This led to us dating. After 2 years of dating, he proposed to me. I love you, Sarah. You put your heart and soul into everything you do. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Are you sure you really want to be with me? Why would you even question it? I want to be with you because you're Sarah, so I want you to get married with me. Yeah, I want to be with you too, Bob. So we officially tied the knot a year ago, but there's one thing that's been bothering me. That is, he doesn't get along well with his parents. Ideally, we would have wanted to hold our wedding ceremony when we got our marriage license, but he refused. The reason was simple. He didn't want to have anything to do with his parents. So when we went to pay a visit to his parents to announce our marriage, it was hard to set a date. We somehow managed to pay a visit to my in-laws, but my husband was in a bad mood the entire time, and we only stayed for 30 minutes. We ended up getting married without having much of a conversation with my in-laws. Of course, I'd like my in-laws to attend our wedding ceremony too. So I decided to be honest about how I feel. Bob, can we talk for a moment? What's up? Well, it's about your parents. We also have the ceremony to think about, so I think we should go see them and have a proper discussion. At my suggestion, my husband let out a deep sigh and responded with an annoyed expression. Didn't I tell you before that I don't want to talk about my parents? As far as I'm concerned, I don't care if we don't invite anyone to our wedding. But we should at least invite your parents, Bob. That's enough. If you insist on having family members there, we can just ask my brother. Isn't that good enough? Well, I'd love to have your brother attend, but you're really persistent, Sarah. This is a matter of my family, so please don't meddle too much. With another sigh, my husband left the living room. I was left alone in the room, slumping down on the couch. Staring blankly at the ceiling, I was overwhelmed by a feeling of emptiness. Oh dear, what should I do? It's such a shame that we're distant from my father-in-law and mother-in-law. They're such nice people. I want them to attend the ceremony. What can I do to make him understand? Even after that, whenever I suggested, let's go see your parents, my husband flat out refused. At some point, he would get angry just by mentioning his parents. One day, my brother-in-law and his wife were coming to visit us at our apartment. We had dinner together once when we reported our marriage. Although they live in the neighboring city and we can easily meet them, it was the first time they visited us since our marriage. After 10 o'clock, our apartment buzzer rang. When I opened the door, there were my brother-in-law, Jake, and his wife, Emily. Hello, Jake. It's been a while. To my greeting, Jake showed a bright smile. Hey, Sarah. Long time no see. I apologize for dropping by unexpectedly. Hope you don't mind. Oh, not at all. Bob is waiting inside. Please come in. Awesome. Thanks. Well, here I come. Following Jake, Emily takes off her shoes. Hello, she calls out, but there is no response from her. Did she not hear me? Emily. She didn't talk much last time we met either. I wish we could be better friends. As they enjoy some casual chatter while having the cake, the atmosphere begins to lighten. Since they decided to have lunch, I started preparing the meal. As I was getting things ready, my brother-in-law entered the kitchen. Sarah, I heard from our folks. You haven't visited home since you got married? Yes, well... It's Bob, isn't it? He doesn't get along well with Dad, right? Yes, that's right. I want my in-laws to come to our wedding, but Bob is hesitant. Upon hearing my confession, my brother-in-law makes a troubled face. After pondering a bit, he said apologetically, "I'm sorry. Bob's being stubborn. I wish I could do something about it." "I'm sorry to cause you trouble, brother-in-law." No, I'm the one who should apologize for not being able to do anything. I'll try to talk to Bob about it indirectly. Really? Thank you. That would be a great help. Meanwhile, my husband and sister-in-law are having fun playing mobile games. Despite my worries, they seem to be enjoying themselves. I started to feel frustrated with my husband. Just as my brother-in-law and his wife were about to leave, my husband spoke up in a low voice. "Hey, what's up?" "Did you say something to my brother?" Why do you ask?" When we were leaving, my brother said, "You should think about Sarah and confront our parents. You were chatting with him while making lunch, right? You stirred up something unnecessary, didn't you?" With a look I've never seen before, my husband glared at me. As I was silenced by the awkwardness, he opened his mouth again. "You know, isn't it unfair to talk to my brother about our parents knowing that I don't want to be involved with them?" "No, I didn't mean—" I'm turned off. I'm not feeling like doing the wedding anymore. What? With a large clicking of his tongue, my husband left the house. He didn't come back until the next day. Since that day, my relationship with Bob has been strained. Our conversations dwindled to the bare minimum, and the once light-hearted atmosphere was gone. Then my husband's absences began to increase gradually, especially on holidays. He was almost never home, and I started to get suspicious. He's been going out too often. Thinking this, I plucked up my courage to confront him. "Hey, you've been going out a lot on your days off recently. Where do you go?" "Does it matter where? Do I need to report everything to you?" "What's with that tone? Do you have a reason you can't tell me?" Half jokingly, I asked him, and his eyebrows shot up. I didn't miss that moment. In a fluster, he said, I've been going to my parents' house." "Parents' house? Bob's?" "Really? I mean, with the wedding coming up, Sarah wanted my parents to join us, remember?" "Well, yeah, but if that's the case, shouldn't I go too?" No, it's fine. My parents would feel uncomfortable with Sarah around. Anyway, that's the situation, so don't worry about it." My husband ended the conversation almost forcefully. It was an attitude that didn't allow me any say in the matter. After that, my husband continued to visit his parents' house on his days off. I expressed my desire to accompany him, but he never agreed. Then, one day, while I was at work in the hospital, a familiar patient was brought in on an emergency basis. What, brother-in-law?" Even when I called out to him, his response was sluggish and his body temperature was high. He was also having mild convulsions. According to the doctor, it's probably heat stroke. I quickly tried to call his wife, but there was no answer, just continued ringing. I'm sure his wife is a homemaker, so why isn't she picking up the phone? Even though my brother-in-law is in such a condition, what should I do? But panicking won't help. I decided to switch gears and call my husband. However, like my brother-in-law's wife, he didn't pick up the phone. My husband should be at his parents' house today, so I decided to try calling his parents' house. Since our marriage, I have not been able to meet or even properly talk with my in-laws. They might not think highly of me, but I can't care about that right now. When I dialed the landline of the in-laws' house, after a few rings, my mother-in-law picked up the phone. This is Sarah. I apologize for not being in touch for so long, mother-in-law." "Oh, Sarah! It's been a long time. Have you been doing well?" "Yes, thanks to you." "I'm sorry, I haven't been able to visit." "Don't worry about that. I'm glad to hear you're doing well, Sarah. And is Bob doing well?" "Yes, he's well." "Wait, what?" I was taken aback by my mother-in-law's words. My husband should be at his parents' house right now. Confused, I hesitantly asked my mother-in-law, Mother-in-law, isn't Bob there now? Bob? I haven't seen him since he introduced you when you got married. What? I thought he's been visiting almost every week. There's no way. You know Bob dislikes us, don't you, Sarah? My husband hadn't been going to his parents' house. What does this mean? Wasn't he supposed to go back home to smooth things over with his parents in preparation for the wedding? The more I thought about it, the more confused I became. To confirm the facts, I called Bob again. Of course, he didn't pick up at first, but I kept calling persistently, over and over again. After about the 10th call, he finally answered the phone. He spoke in a noticeably irritated tone. What is it? You keep calling. I'm busy. Busy? Even though you haven't even been to your parents' house? Huh? How do you? I just had a chat with my mother-in-law on the phone. Hey, what's the deal? It's not just today. You haven't been visiting your parents' home all this time, right? Well, that's... Explain it properly. Where are you right now? As I waited silently for his answer, my husband nonchalantly said, I'm watching baseball with Jake. Baseball? Yeah, you can hear it, can't you? The cheers of watching the game? Jake and I are having a blast right now. At that moment, waves of pent-up anger overtook my restraint. Indeed, behind my husband, lively voices could be heard. Judging from the sounds, it seemed true that they were at a baseball game. But that's not the issue. The main issue was that my husband was lying big time. How should I confront him? Holding back my anger, I pondered. Then, Hey, Bob, how long are you going to be on the phone? Emily, my sister-in-law, whose voice I could recognize through the phone, chimed in. There was no mistaking it, since we just met the other day. Realizing that the call had been disconnected and only the busy signal was echoing in my ear. Ah, so that's how it is. Everything was a lie. I can't forgive this. At this rate, I'll corner him by any means necessary. I, who realized everything, headed to Jake's place. Fortunately, his condition had already stabilized, and he was sleeping soundly. I'll reappear later. As I was about to leave the room, opening the door, a voice came from behind me. Sarah? Oh, Jake, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. It was a heat stroke, huh? I was feeling sluggish, but I was so busy that I didn't have time to hydrate. Please be careful. I was really surprised when you were brought in. Sorry. So, why are you here, Sarah? Well, actually... I informed Jake that my husband might be with Emily at the moment. Then rather than being surprised, Jake smirked. I see. You've noticed, Sarah. By the way you're saying it, Jake, did you know about this all along? Yeah, well, I found out about a month ago, and I just started gathering evidence. But I've got more than enough evidence now, so don't worry. I see. I'm sorry. I didn't know anything. No, it's okay. I was waiting for the right timing to tell you because I thought it would be too harsh on you. Though it turned out this way, I feel like I can finally move on. Jake laughed weakly, but he seemed somewhat lonely. At the same time, I felt an immense dislike for the two who made Jake and me feel this way. I waited for my brother-in-law's recovery, and then we headed to his parents' house together. Upon explaining the sequence of events to my in-laws, they were momentarily at a loss for words after learning the truth. With apologetic looks, they began to apologize. Sarah, we're sorry. Our foolish son, to have an affair? We're sorry, Sarah. We never expected this to happen. Please, don't apologize. I'm okay. But, right, honey? Yes, apologies won't fix this. We're truly sorry. It's okay. Instead, could you lend me and your son a little help? my brother-in-law and I proposed two things to my in-laws. From now on, ignore any calls for help from my husband and my brother-in-law's wife. Accept our respective divorces wholeheartedly. Without any hesitation, my in-laws promised their cooperation. After that, my brother-in-law and I each made simultaneous calls to his wife and my husband. Perhaps surprised to be called at the same time as Emily, my husband picked up the phone immediately. "Hello? Sarah, what's up?" "What do you mean, what's up? You're with Emily right now, aren't you?" "What are you talking about? Why would I be with my brother's wife? I heard Emily's voice in the background when I called earlier. And your brother knows everything. We've got concrete evidence of the affair." "Eh?" Thinking he could still fool me, my husband kept spouting nonsense, like it's a misunderstanding and he just happened to run into her. I was fed up with his lack of remorse and his constant prioritization of self-preservation, even at this point. Out of sheer anger and feeling betrayed, I raised my voice. "Shut up! Misunderstanding? What are you saying at this point? Do you think such excuses will work? You took advantage of my feelings and betrayed me in the worst possible way. I will never forgive you. I'm divorcing you, you scum." "What? Wait! I didn't intend to divorce." "What? How dare you say that after cheating on me? Just so you know, I have no intention of getting back with you. You and that woman. I hope you both go to hell. Your parents won't help you anymore. Suffer for the rest of your life, regretting what you've done, you piece of trash." Without waiting for his response, I hung up. Shortly after, my brother-in-law and I went to the city office to get divorce papers. Eventually, my husband and I divorced amicably. Initially reluctant, he finally signed the divorce papers after being persuaded by his parents. Of course, my brother-in-law's divorce was also finalized. We both demanded substantial alimony from them. I later found out that my ex-husband had been involved with my brother-in-law's wife for quite some time. Apparently, he was meeting her during lunch breaks and after work, and their affair was exposed at the worst possible time by their coworkers. As a result, his reputation at work plummeted. Unable to withstand the judgment from his colleagues, he eventually quit his job after repeated absences. My brother-in-law's wife, who was a stay-at-home wife, also had her life turned upside down. She lived with my ex-husband for a while after the divorce, but as their financial situation worsened, their arguments increased, and they broke up within a few months. For a while, she won't be able to lead a decent life. On my end, surprisingly, I've been getting by day to day without much fuss. Right after my divorce, I moved to an apartment near work, living a carefree life. I still keep in regular contact with my brother-in-law and my ex-in-laws. Where I am today is thanks to them. They will always be important people to me. That will never change. I'll make sure to live in a way that won't bring shame to them. I'll prove that I can be happy on my own. That's the solemn promise I made to myself.
"I'm going on a business trip for the next 3 days," he announced. I wonder how many times I've been left alone on the weekends due to such trips. "I'll be late due to overtime," he often said, resulting in countless nights without a family dinner. At first, I thought it was better not to know, but eventually my husband's repetitive actions received what he deserved. My name is Nancy, a part-time housewife at 44. My husband, Paul, is 46, a corporate employee at a certain company. While his work is not bad, he is a man who values his style and appearance above all else. We've been married for 19 years. The year after our wedding, our son William was born, and without any significant issues, our marital life has reached this point. Or so I wish I could say. The reality is that I've spent more than half of our married life being manipulated by my husband's lies. He was always worried about his smartphone. Initially, I thought it was work-related, but I'd occasionally see him typing away, and upon sneaking a peek, it was usually a conversation with someone on an instant messaging app. I didn't pay much attention at the time, but looking back, there were indeed many suspicious points. As his sudden overtime and weekend business trips increased, I began to feel something was off. Several summers ago, my husband, who was supposed to be on a 3-day business trip, returned home with a heavy tan. Why are you so tanned when you were supposed to be in a suit for a business trip? I went swimming with a client. It was part of the entertainment. A bit back at his absurd answer, but at the time, I only thought it was unfair that he had a fun time alone, reflecting how stupid I was. My often absent husband used work as an excuse to leave the care of his parents to me. A few years ago, my mother-in-law became disabled due to an injury, and my husband never once offered to accompany her to her hospital visits. He should have some paid leave, but he would blatantly ignore any calls from her. Thus, I'd have to take time off from my part-time job to accompany her. My mother-in-law was a strict person, possibly because she used to be a teacher of traditional calligraphy. I'm rather scatterbrained and prone to mistakes, so I often found myself on the receiving end of her harsh words. To be honest, I didn't like her that much, and I've discussed this with my husband many times. Could you please accompany her to the hospital next week? Your mother would surely want to see you. I would if I can, but there might be a company trip around that time. What? I've never heard about such a trip. Well, it was decided last weekend. I pressed him about this sudden company trip, but he refused to listen. In the end, I had to accompany my mother-in-law to the hospital, yet again. There was a weekend when my husband was surprisingly home. Our son, who was now in 5th grade, had been performing well in his soccer team, so I suggested that we go watch his game together. Every parent watching the children's game lost themselves in the cheer. Our son coordinated well with his teammates, leading the game solidly, and they achieved a splendid victory. Both parents and children were wildly excited about the team's results, and we, as a married couple, joined hands in joy after a long time. The one who approached us at this moment was a mother of a teammate, Patricia. Patricia was a very straightforward woman, and I quickly became friends with her. We would regularly share updates on our children's troubles, home affairs, etc., and began visiting each other's homes more frequently. My husband also got along well with her. Even if Patricia was still at our house when my husband came home from work, we actually felt glad. Our relationship deepened as friends of our marriage. In this way, we continued to have a family-wide relationship, involving not only our sons, but also Patricia's husband. One day, after several years of such interaction, Patricia suddenly started saying something surprising. I know this may sound odd, but doesn't your husband Paul seem to be pretty popular with women? An old man like him? No way. Well, the other day, I saw a man who looked just like Paul at a restaurant with a seductive woman. They looked really close. Patricia then gave a detailed account of what she saw my husband and the mysterious woman doing at the restaurant. Even I was stunned by what she described. Although shocked by Patricia's sighting, I was at a loss as to what to do about the sudden suspicion of my husband's infidelity. While I was still speechless, Patricia advised me to gather evidence first. You can't just vaguely accuse him of cheating, you need to confront him with evidence. She then proceeded to teach me several methods to gather evidence of infidelity. From then on, I could only view my husband with a suspicious eye, and our marriage became even more strained than before. Between our son's SATs, accompanying my mother-in-law to the hospital, my part-time job, and housework, I had plenty on my plate. It was a lot to add the task of looking for evidence of my husband's infidelity, but I did things like search his suit pockets when he was out. Then came that day. Although we had separate bedrooms for a long time, when my husband was away, I felt blissful spreading out on the large bed. I decided to do the same that night and went to the bedroom. When I changed the sheets and duvet and moved my husband's pillow to put mine in place, I found a bank book underneath. Upon inspection, I saw that a fixed amount was being transferred every month to the same person from the account under my husband's name. Checking the name, it read, Patricia Brown. Yes, that's right, to Patricia, our friend, he had been transferring about $300 every month. I silently took a picture of it with my smartphone. The next day was the day I had to accompany my mother-in-law to the hospital. Hey, Nancy, are you listening? It seemed I had been spacing out, thinking about the bank book from the day before. I'm sorry, I wasn't listening very well. Well, I saw Paul walking early in the morning. This was my mother-in-law's story. When she was riding in a friend's car through the residential area early in the morning for some errands, she saw my husband walking and entering an unfamiliar house. Who would he be visiting at such an hour? The only houses you could enter early in the morning would be families, right? As I listened to my mother-in-law's story, I recalled what Patricia had told me earlier. Proof of infidelity. I asked my mother-in-law to give me a general idea of the address in that town. Soon, it was crunch time for our son's college entrance exams, and he was attending cram school every day. The cram school fee was set to be automatically deducted from my husband's account, but I received a notice stating the fee could not be deducted 2 times in a row. I decided to ask my husband about it. The money for William's cram school, they said they couldn't deduct it from the account. Ah, well, can you cover it for now? I'll pay you back later. My husband's behavior seemed odd. Still, I didn't want any conflicts before our son's exams, so I agreed to pay the fee for the time being. But then the same issue occurred the next month, and I had to confront my husband. I'm sorry, I have some debts that need to be settled. I promise to sort it out next month, he said. But by the next month, our son's college entrance exams would have started, and the cram school would be over. I was disappointed that my husband didn't even realize that. Then, our son's exams were successfully finished. He was accepted into the high-profile soccer school he had hoped for. It seems like he didn't make it, I heard. Patricia's son, Robert, had also aimed for the same high school as William, but unfortunately, he didn't pass. He was likely going to attend his backup private school. But according to my son, Robert had stopped appearing at school after the exams. He didn't even show up for the graduation ceremony, and I felt awkward contacting Patricia, so our communication ended there. As my son's high school life settled down, I found myself thinking about what Patricia had told me more frequently. There were several instances of my husband's suspicious behavior, and it was still continuing. At this point, I wanted to clear my mind of all the uncertainty, so I decided to seriously confront my husband. First of all, it was Patricia, whom I had stopped contacting for some time. I contacted her. Then she told me something shocking. Do you have plans for this weekend? Why the sudden question? This weekend, I'll probably be on a business trip from Friday. After confirming that, I called my husband's company on Friday. Hi, I was hoping to know the accommodation my husband is staying at on his business trip. I can't seem to reach him on his cell phone. That's strange. We don't have anyone out on business trips starting today. Feeling as if I knew what was going on, I misled the person from his company and ended the call. That night, I got into a car at a prearranged meeting place and headed towards a residential area. I was determined to obtain solid proof. After midnight, a man who looked like my husband and a slender woman got out of a taxi and went into the house. I quickly took a picture. Zooming in, it was clear that the man was my husband, and the woman's face was easily identifiable as well. Gathering one piece of evidence after another, I set the date for the confrontation. It was a few days after my husband returned from his business trip, looking exhausted. I'll be late tonight again because of overtime. Upon hearing my husband's words, I responded with a grin. Ah, our last supper then. Enjoy yourself. There was probably a profound sense of unease in my husband's face from my unexpected smile. He left, scratching his head. Little did he know, stepping into the worst occasion. That night, I hopped in the car again and headed to our designated meeting place. Arriving at the house where I had seen my husband enter with another woman, I rang the doorbell and turned the doorknob. Good evening. Mind if I come in? Startled by the unfamiliar voice, the woman who came out asked, Who are you? I thought my husband was here, I responded, pointing to a pair of men's shoes by the door. Those belong to my husband. I was shocked to learn she was also married. Indeed, there were other men's shoes. Ignoring her, I barged in, saying, "Excuse me." A meal was set up on the table, as if they had just begun to eat. However, my husband was nowhere to be seen. Looking around, I noticed a window leading to the backyard was open. "Got him." Those were the words from Patricia outside the window. Yes, my husband had tried to escape through the backyard when he realized I was there. I confronted my husband and the married woman. "When did this start?" "It's been 1 to 2 years. Really, it's not that long." Listening to my husband justify that a 1 to 2 year affair wasn't long, I responded, 10 years, right? I know it. It's been going on for a long time. With that girl from your office, right? What are you talking about? Upon hearing my words, both Sarah and Patricia twisted their faces in confusion. "I visited your office and spoke to a few people. You know how there are always some friendly, chatty folks who are happy to spill the beans? Well, they were quite kind to tell me everything. The rumors about you and a girl named Sarah. It seems you two were quite famous." "You went to my office? And they told you that?" "Indeed. When I mentioned that it seems like you have been betraying me for the past 10 years, people were all too eager to share what they knew." My husband, trembling slightly, looked lost, as if he was trying to figure out what he should do next. Seeing him like that, I decided to throw him another curveball. "You're shaking, aren't you? How will you manage with what's coming next?" As I finished speaking, the front doorbell rang. Sarah, who jumped up in surprise, rushed to the door, and I followed her. The visitor was Robert, my son's soccer buddy, and Patricia's son. When I invited Robert into the house, Patricia, who was already there, looked surprised and wide-eyed. "You live nearby with your father now, right, Robert? As I understand it, your parents suddenly fell out for reasons you still don't really comprehend. And you've reconnected with our son. You've been talking to me about it too. Let's clear things up here and now." I said this and looked at Patricia. "The woman my husband also cheated with was you, Patricia." Patricia looked at me in surprise and glanced down, unable to meet her son's gaze. Sarah seemed astonished, too. "So it began when you met us, right? Pretending to get along with me while both of you were betraying me behind my back." I quickly wiped away my tears and turned to my husband. "Why were you transferring $300 every month to Patricia? Was it because you were paying her that we couldn't afford William's tutoring fees? How could you take money meant for our son's education and give it to your mistress?" My husband looked shocked that I knew so much, but he couldn't say anything in his defense. In response, Patricia's son Robert said, "Both my mother and you are despicable, dragging their families into this." Robert said that with a disdainful glare at the two before leaving. "It's your fault. You knew you were seeing this woman, and it wasn't about wanting money. You tried to appease me with money, didn't you?" Patricia suddenly broke down, hitting my husband's chest as she cried and accused him. My husband had begun an affair with Patricia while he was still seeing Sarah. Exasperated with this, Patricia had started to hint at the infidelity to me, thinking me as suspicious. My husband was trying to placate Patricia, all the while conscious of the gazes of Sarah and me. Sarah seemed angry, her face red, but I felt myself cooling off. It all started to feel ridiculous. "Are you all crazy? Am I the only one who has to take responsibility in the end? But fine, I don't need a man like this. You two do as you please." I said that, handed the prepared divorce papers to my husband, and continued. "I'll send all your stuff to your parents' house. They'll be charged on delivery, so you'll be hearing from your mother soon. But I was wrong. I truly cared only for you. Help me." As I tried to leave, my husband, looking desperate, tried to peel off the two women closing in on him and begged me. "Why not ask your mother for help?" I replied calmly and headed for the entrance. At the door, I bumped into an unfamiliar man. It looked like the Sarah's husband. I left the house with a smile, knowing that the unexpected return of the husband would stir up another row. Afterwards, we divorced. My husband's long-term misconduct became known not only to his parents, but also to his colleagues, and he was severely reprimanded by his stern mother. His credibility at work fell drastically, forcing him to resign. Patricia, who was his mistress, was handed divorce papers by her estranged husband and seemed to have ended up completely alone. Sarah seemed to have moved somewhere, judging from the sale of her house. The scale of the consequences of my husband's long-term infidelity would probably shock him for the rest of his life. For me, since my husband's family had assets, I was able to receive a substantial alimony. It took courage to tell my son the truth, but he quietly listened to my struggles and told me that he too would do his best to live without any worries in the future. Now I live peacefully with my son.